How do we live the good life? How do we become the best version of ourselves and live our best life now? Well, these two blokes think they have the answer. Hey everyone, welcome back to Bear It in Mind. My name is Tom and I'm a teacher of psychology, and on this channel we explore the world of psychology so that we can better understand ourselves and others. In this video we're going to explore humanistic psychology and specifically focus on the self, self-actualization, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need, Carl Rogers including congruence and conditions of worth, and the influence of counselling psychology, along with free will. At the end of the video there'll be some questions based on what we cover in this video so that you can check your understanding. Let's dive in. Now here's some quick context on humanistic psychology so that you have some idea of how it came about. At the turn of the 20th century, the psychodynamic approach in Sigmund Freud, with his focus on all the dark desires and drives going on in our unconscious mind, was well established and had permeated the thoughts of psychologists and the culture at large. From 1913, behaviourism came to prominence with their emphasis on how behaviour is shaped and influenced by external environmental forces. Here we see Ivan Pavlov's work on classical conditioning and how behaviour is learned through association, and then B.F. Skinner's work on operant conditioning, demonstrating the power of reward and punishment, which we see so powerfully today in gambling and social media use. But then in the 1950s, in direct response to the psychodynamic and behaviourist approaches, a third force arose to challenge these views. This became known as humanistic psychology. In fact, humanistic psychology, in their rejection of behaviourism in particular, is clear on the fact that they reject the scientific method. They are not interested in the scientific process and are much more interested in your subjective personal experiences. Finally, one of the key reasons for the rise of the humanistic approach was how they thought that the focus at the time was on the sick half of psychology, with what had gone wrong with people.
What's wrong with you?
In contrast, they wanted to ask questions about and explore what healthy growth looked like for people. Their focus was on the self, our subjective experiences, and how we personally grow. In other words, how do we live our best life and live the best version of ourselves? What is the good life? To help you understand the humanistic approach, we're going to explore the work of two key individuals, Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. Abraham Maslow was particularly interested in human motivation and proposed a theory about the route towards something called self-actualization. Maslow defined this as people's desire for self-fulfillment, namely the tendency for them to become actualized in what they are potentially. This tendency might be phrased as the desire to become everything that one is capable of becoming. Now, let's break that down a bit. To actualize means to make a reality of. So to put it another way, self-actualization is the innate desire to achieve or fulfill one's full potential, becoming what you are capable of. And this need is present in everyone, according to humanistic psychology. Maslow described the human condition as one of wanting, in that we are always seeking and desiring something, and so our actions are motivated by certain needs. He categorized these needs into a hierarchy of needs, which became the name for his theory. His hierarchy of needs emphasized the importance of personal growth and fulfillment. Humanistic psychologists regard personal growth as an essential part of what it is to be human. Personal growth is concerned with developing and changing as a person to become fulfilled, satisfied, and goal-oriented. Before you can self-actualize, however, Maslow's hierarchy of needs proposed that there were other lower needs that needed to be met. First, there are physiological needs such as food, water, and sleep. Then, safety needs, which refers to being safe and out of danger, having a home, employment in a job, and being in good health. Then there is love and belonging needs, which refer to our need for friendship, intimacy, and acceptance by other people. Then self-esteem needs, which refer to our confidence, our achievement, and being respected by other people. For Maslow, these lower needs must be met before an individual can attempt to satisfy their self-actualization needs. These he termed deficiency needs. Self-actualization, in contrast, is where people experience purpose and meaning in life. They are characterized by an acceptance of who they and others are. They are also independent. They don't go along with other people's ideas of happiness, they live in the moment, and are also open and spontaneous to new experiences, not confined by people's expectations. It's thought that you could recognize someone in a state of self-actualization in that they do not focus on themselves or on how other people perceive them. Maslow based the hierarchy of needs on his analysis of historical figures whom he considered to be self-actualized. From this analysis, he identified the characteristics that they shared in common. Examples of those he classified as self-actualizers included Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. For Maslow, these were individuals who had used their abilities to their fullest, who had actualized and made a reality their full potential, and had been fulfilled in life. So now let's illustrate Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a way that might make it a bit more real to you. Remember, Maslow is interested in motivation, so depending on what your current needs are at any one time, this is going to be connected to your motivation. So maybe you've just moved away from home to university. Now, I'm hoping that you have food and water taken care of. I know student life can be difficult and doesn't always allow for the fanciest of meals, but remember, beans on toast is always a safe option. And when it comes to safety, I hope that you feel safe in your new student digs and with the people around you. However, I guess that one of the needs that you feel the most when you move to a new city and university is to feel like you belong, to be loved and accepted. So often our behaviour is motivated by this need. We may be a little more anxious when meeting new people because we want to be accepted and loved. We may also have some doubts about whether we are smart enough to be at this university, so we might be motivated to work extra hard with the first couple of assignments so that we feel like we belong. Or likewise, if we don't do so well, we make sure not to mention it to others. Why? Because we are motivated to be loved and belong. Then, after a little while, when you settle in, you hopefully achieve some success on some assignments and grow in self-esteem in the subject you've chosen to study. At this point, according to Maslow, with those needs met, you're able to personally grow and achieve your potential, to find meaning and purpose in your studies, to be open to new experiences and challenges. And a quick side note, apparently, later on, shortly before his death, Maslow added an additional level to the top, a sixth level known as self-transcendence, something he referred to as the need to connect to something beyond and higher than ourselves. This was because if someone is already self-actualizing, what then motivates that person? Maslow's observation was intrinsic values, such as truth, goodness, beauty, perfection, excellence, simplicity, elegance, and so on. These are all things that go beyond your self-interests. They have value in and of themselves. I'll put a link in the description to more information on that if you're interested. Now we come to Carl Rogers. Where Maslow was interested in motivation, Rogers was interested in personal growth from the point of view of your sense of self, what he called your self-concept. The self-concept can be broken up into three parts. The self-image, also referred to as the actual self. This is how you see yourself right now. The ideal self, this is who you want to be or feel you should be. And self-esteem, this is how much you like and accept who you are, which is influenced by how others see you and how you think about yourself in comparison to others. For Rogers, the problems come when who we think we should be or want to be does not match up with who we see ourselves to be now. In other words, our self-image does not match our ideal self. Rogers used the term congruence. This is when the self-image and the ideal self overlap. They are in agreement. And he also used the word incongruence. This is where the self-image and ideal self do not overlap. They do not match. According to Rogers, self-actualization is most likely to occur when there is congruence. The closer our self-image and ideal self are to each other, the greater the congruence and the higher our feelings of self-worth. A person with high self-worth welcomes challenges, accepts failures, and can self-actualize. A person with low self-worth will not accept challenges or failures and have problems with intimacy in relationships. So how does someone develop congruence between their self-image and their ideal self? Well, for Rogers, a healthy self-concept comes about through what a person has experienced in their life, with a child's relationship with their parents playing a key role. Rogers referred to unconditional positive regard. This is where parents love and accept their children regardless of their behaviour. There are no conditions that the child has to meet in order to be positively viewed. This will lead to the children being confident in taking on challenges. However, Rogers also referred to something called conditions of worth. This is where standards are placed on the child by a parent which they believe they must meet if they are to be accepted. An individual may experience a sense of self-acceptance only if they meet the expectations that others have set as conditions of acceptance. So if a child feels that they have to earn their parents' love, in other words, the parents' love is conditional, it is based on what the child does or does not do, this can have the effect of a person developing low self-esteem and are unable to self-actualize. They are in a state of incongruence. However, achieving congruence by yourself is very difficult and so often requires the help of other people, which brings us to our next section. To reduce the congruence in your life requires deep reflection on how you see yourself as well as your own motivations, and this can be very challenging for us to do, particularly with our own blind spots and faulty thinking at times. Key to the work of Carl Rogers was his counselling therapy, which has gone on to shape and influence modern-day counselling in numerous ways. This therapy was referred to as client or person-centered therapy. This is because the word client avoids the person being viewed as sick. Again, a reference back to moving away from the psychodynamic approach. This therapy has also sometimes been referred to as Rogerian therapy for obvious reasons. Rogers referred to those in therapy as client rather than patient, as he saw the individual as the expert on their own condition. The client is encouraged towards the discovery of their own solution within a warm, supportive, and non-judgmental atmosphere. The therapist's role is to guide the individual themselves as opposed to being the expert with the answers who can fix them, which is in contrast to the role of talking therapies proposed by Freud's psychoanalytic theories. For Rogers, an effective therapist should provide the client with three things: genuineness, empathy, and unconditional positive regard, which is a positive evaluation of the client regardless of their behaviour. The aim of the therapy is to increase the person's feelings of self-worth, reduce the level of incongruence between the self-image and the ideal self, and to help the person become a more fully functioning person. So let's consider a scenario, but remember this is just a hypothetical scenario to illustrate and help you understand humanism. One day, Lizzie has a meeting with the school counsellor because she's been struggling lately with her studies. She tells the counsellor how much she's been suffering from anxiety around exams and how it's all getting too much, and she's considering packing in A-levels and just getting a job. What might be going on here? Well, the counsellor explores the situation further with Lizzie, showing genuine care and concern for her. Lizzie goes on to share that she very much feels in the shadow of her older sister. This older sister achieved top grades in her A-levels and is now studying at Oxford University. She explains how her parents tend to talk about her sister more than her and often make judgments and comments about her in comparison to what her sister was like when she was her age, and they never seem to see her for who she is. The counsellor does their best to empathise with Lizzie in the situation so that she feels genuinely heard and accepted. Rogers might come to the conclusion at this point that Lizzie has low self-worth and is not really experiencing personal growth and certainly not achieving her best. There is incongruence between her self-image and her ideal self, and all this seems to be related to the conditions of worth developed from her parents. The counsellor would try to guide Lizzie through a journey of self-discovery so that she could perhaps change her self-image or change her ideal self. But this can only happen if the therapist is genuine, empathetic, and shows unconditional positive regard towards her. Finally, we come to free will. Unlike most other approaches, humanistic theories emphasize that people have full conscious control over their own destiny. i.e. they have free will. This is not saying that we are free to do anything at all, as we are subject to many other forces, including biological and social influences. However, humanistic psychologists believe that human beings are able to make significant personal choices within the constraints imposed by these other forces. They see people as active agents and as having personal agency, the ability to make choices. Now that we've explored the different features of humanistic psychology in the work of Maslow and Rogers, hopefully you can see the emphasis on free will. From Maslow's hierarchy of need, where people are active agents, pursuing purpose and meaning in life which can be specific and unique to them, to Carl Rogers' emphasis on personal growth through congruence and self-discovery. For both Maslow and Rogers, the ability to make free choices is necessary to self-actualize, to achieve our potential. So now let's test your understanding of what we've covered about humanistic psychology. A question will appear with a few seconds for you to pause the video before the answer appears. Here we go. Question 1. What was it about the psychodynamic and behaviourist approaches that humanistic psychology rejected? Question 2. Who are the two key psychologists in relation to humanistic psychology? Question 3. What was Abraham Maslow particularly interested in? Question 4. Name Maslow's hierarchy of need in order from bottom to top. Question 5. Define what is meant by self-actualization. Question 6. What term did Maslow give to the lower needs that need to be met before self-actualization can be achieved? Question 7. Carl Rogers was interested in personal growth and your self-concept. What are the three parts to the self-concept? Question 8. What is meant by the term congruence in relation to humanistic psychology? Question 9. Explain the terms unconditional positive regard and conditions of worth in relation to humanistic psychology. Question 10. What was the name of the counselling therapy pioneered by Carl Rogers, and why was it called this? Question 11. According to Rogers, what are the three essential characteristics of a therapist? Question 12. Name three aims of client-centered therapy. So now that you hopefully understand something of the humanistic psychology, perhaps you're now ready to critically consider its ideas. Check out this video on the screen that evaluates humanistic psychology, or for more on the other approaches in psychology, check out the playlist on the screen too. I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.